We're going to go ahead and get started. Barrett, you ready to take charge?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks for setting this up.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to everybody for taking time out of your day to spend with us to learn about growing your lawn care business. Our goal here today is, while we own and run a company called Holganix that manufactures and distributes organic microbial products to help soil health and plant health and be an asset for you as an agronomic tool. Really, what we're going to talk about today is how to grow your business. And we just want to do this as a way to kind of give back to our community and help you think about growing your business this time of the year. This is the perfect time of the year, by the way, to think about growing your business because you're wrapping up the 2018 season. You should be starting to think about 2019. You should be putting together a marketing plan right now. And how much do you want to grow? How are you going to grow? And that marketing plan should be you should be executing that marketing plan if you're not already doing so. As soon as you come back from the holidays. And so that January, February timeframe is perfect time for you to be going out and getting new business and lining up the year so you have a really successful 2019. So this is a great way to kind of tee things up. So Caitlin, you want to? So Caitlin Ersick is she runs our marketing. She's organizing this webinar for us today. And Barrett Ersick, I'm the founder and CEO of Holganix. I've also built and sold two lawn care companies. Sold one to Scott's and one to ChemLawn. And both of those were fast growth, high growth companies. So a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about today comes from either my experience in running and building lawn care companies, or comes from what I've learned in talking to our customers. We've got over 1,000 lawn care companies using our products out in the country, and so I get to meet lawn care people every day running companies, and I can see the ones that are really doing well at growing. And so I always kind of pick their brains, and so we can share some of their success stories as well. Katie, why don't you get us started?
Yeah.
So our agenda here is we're going to first talk about people and how we have to really focus on our people in order to grow our business. If we don't have the people part right, everything else kind of falls apart. And then we're going to talk about how to use marketing and really targeted, focused marketing to generate sales. How to pay for your marketing. At the end of the day, growing a lawn care business is going to take cash. So where does the cash come from, and how do you make that happen? And as we go through the presentation today, as you have questions, write them down, because at the end we'll have an open Q&A. You'll be able to type your questions to us, and we'll be able to answer them for the group. And so it should be very interactive. So with that, we'll get started. So this is Verne Harnish. If you haven't seen this book or read this book, I highly recommend it. If you own, operate, manage, work for a growth company, so a lawn care operation, and you're planning to grow that business year over year, this to me is your blueprint. This is your owner's manual. This is really practical tools to use to grow your company. This guy, Verne Harnish, who wrote this book, is a growth guru. He writes for Fortune magazine and hosts summits with over 1,000 entrepreneurs of high growth companies. And he's also a mentor of mine, and he's an investor in Holganix as well. So really grateful to have him in my corner. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the book for efficiency purposes, but I would highly recommend that you buy the book. You can also get it on audio if you're more of a listener than you are a reader. But I promise you, it will give you really good practical tools to grow your business. And Verne talks about people as one of your primary drivers, and we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do, quick audience question. What is your function within your company? So if we could just give us an idea who we have on the phone, and or on the webinar, it'll give us an idea on how to gear the webinar for the right people. CEO, Mark, are you a CEO owner of the company? Do you run marketing? Do you run sales? Or do you have another role in the company as your primary role? We're probably all doing everything. If you guys have your businesses like the way I have mine, and any one day I could be any one of these boxes. What's your primary role? Go ahead and vote now. And Kate can give us compile the results. So 53% are CEO owners, 6% are focused on marketing as their primary role, 18% of the people on the program are 18% are in sales, 24% are other. And so that's all good. And by the way, if there's one role that we all are in all the time, it's sales. So I don't care if you're running a truck every day, if you're organizing the routes, if you're in the office, answering the phones, if you're the owner, whatever, everybody in the company all the time has a function to do sales because we all come in contact with customers, with prospects. We're always representing the company, so we need to always be selling, no matter what role we're in. So don't forget that. So with that, we'll move on to our next slide. And we're going to get into that people role that I was teeing up from Verne Harnish's slide. You know, Lawn Landscape had a poll out this year, and they said 56% of lawn care companies said that quality labor was their number one concern. So there's not enough quality labor out there. It's hard to find them. It's hard to keep them. And it's hard to pay them. And so I'd be surprised if there wasn't somebody on the phone that didn't agree with that. Certainly, it's been a challenge growing our business with Holganix, and it was a challenge in growing my other two businesses. And so, you know, let's talk about that for a second. You know, people say, you know, what am I you in the B2B business, so business selling to business, or are you in the B2C business, you know, business selling to consumer? And so some people on the phone are probably selling to commercial, you know, selling to large operations, you know, selling to commercial lawn care. Some of you are selling to residential, so you're selling to the homeowners. But it really doesn't matter whether you're B2B or B2C. Every single person that's in business that's trying to add customers is really in the P2P business, which is people to people. So it's really people selling people. And so if you don't get the people part right, you can have the best sales program, the best sales strategy, the best marketing campaign. If you don't have the people component right, it's all going to fall apart at some point. We've got to focus on people. And when I say focus on people, we're going to just cover, you know, very briefly, how do we empower our employees? And, you know, the millennial workforce today, you hear people frequently will complain about the millennial worker. You know, they're hard to manage, they're hard to motivate. You know, they want to be empowered. They don't want to be told what to do like a machine. They want to have some autonomy, and they want to know what the goal is, and they want to be empowered to reach that goal. If you can, I don't care if you're millennial or any other generation, if you can empower your people, you'll get more out of them, and they'll be happier and more effective for you. And then how do we increase efficiency by measuring success? You know, it's not enough to just say, do a good job, do your best. You know, you have to measure your results. What gets measured gets improved. So, Katie, why don't you take us to the next slide here? So this goes into the empowering the employee. This was one of my companies that we built and sold. We sold this company to ChemLawn, and we grew this company. We went 2 million one year, 5 million the next year, 10 million. So 2 million, 5 million, 8 million, 10 million. So over 4 years, we grew from 2 million to $10 million. And you can see here, this is, you know, midway through that growth, and you can see the team we have there. And so, you know, it was really important to us to have that team working together to reach our goals and work efficiently, because, you know, that many people, if things are off track a little bit, that certainly eats up a lot of payroll real quickly. And so at the same time, if you can get that many people focused in the same direction, doing the same thing and doing it all right, it can be very, very effective. So we had our Dream On initiative, is what we called it. And, you know, we had big goals in the company to, you know, go from 2 million to 5 million, 5 million to 8 million. They were big, lofty goals. And, you know, we could get our people excited about that goal. We could pay them commissions to help us reach that goal. But ultimately, what we found was that to really empower our team to reach the goal, it was this Dream On initiative. And what we decided to do is we went to our people and we said, look, we want to help you reach your goals, you know, whatever your personal goals are. Each person had their own goal plan. We brought in a consultant that was a goal setting consultant that helped people set goals and reach goals. And we ran seminars every month, and all the employees were invited to that seminar every month. And at that seminar, they're encouraged to set their goals and to create a plan to reach their goals. All the managers knew what the goals were of the people that worked for them. And so what they could do is they could say, listen, at Happy Lawn, we want to help you reach your goals, but in order to do that, we need you to help us reach our goals. So what we were able to do was enroll the employee into realizing that by helping the company reach its goals, that they could get bonuses and commissions and extra production bonuses and what have you, which would help them reach their goals. And so we tied it all together. And, you know, I can remember, you know, there was a Hispanic guy that had worked for us who came up through one of the visa programs. and his goal is to own a house. And we helped him sit down and write the plan to own that house, and sure enough, within a year, he was able to buy a house for his family, and they still live in that house today. We had another young guy that had just kind of dropped out of college to work for us running a truck, and his goal is to have a BMW M3. And we showed him what he needed to do from production perspective and from a sales perspective to earn enough money to buy a BMW M3, and that's what he did. And so when you get the employees to really think through what their goals are, and you can help them realize that their portion of helping the company reach its goals can directly tie to their own goals, frequently we can get much higher level of commitment and productivity and engagement out of our employees. And by the way, they stick with you longer. They're happier. They're excited to come to work. They're excited to work on Saturdays. And they're able to do all this simply because they want to reach their own goals. And look, I'm not going to tell you that every single person it's going to work perfectly for. But what I will tell you is when we did this, we certainly engaged more than half of the company in that goal setting program, and more than half the company, did move towards their personal goals and did so by helping the company reach its goals. And so it was really tremendous for us. And I think it was one of the driving strategies that helped us go from 2 million to 5 million to 8 million to 10 million in revenue. And to do so while having not just chaos, but having a really engaged, fun, exciting workforce. So that's our Dream On initiative. And by the way, I stole that initiative. I should say I got it through R&D, which is rip off and duplicate. And I encourage all of you, if this idea excites you, go ahead and R&D it from me. But I took it from a guy who I met, who's a friend of mine named John Ratliff, who had a company that had a phone center. They answered phones for plumbers and doctors and people that couldn't be in their offices, and a lot of kind of frontline labor that was making minimum wage or just above. And he had a challenge motivating, empowering, and keeping employees because it was kind of a tough job. It wasn't some place that people dreamt about working necessarily. And so he created this Dream On initiative. And so I encourage you to kind of write that email address down, or actually Katie will send it to you after the webinar. You don't have to think about writing it down, but I want you to go to YouTube and take a look at his 7-minute video where he explains his Dream On initiative and how it made an impact in their business. And he grew the company tremendously, and he credits that Dream On initiative as doing so. So here's an example in the lawn care space, and somebody that really was able to grow his business. And this is one of our customers, Jonathan Rigsby, down in North Carolina market, sort of outside of Greensboro, North Carolina area. And he's got a company called Growing Green. We just did a webinar with him, by the way, about a month ago. If you're interested in learning more about his business, Katie can send you the webinar on that as well. But Jonathan made a big deal in his webinar about talking about he's grown a very nice business over the last 10 or 15 years. And he really was excited about getting his revenue per truck to be as high as he possibly could. And obviously, I think we'd all like our revenue per truck to go up as much as possible, but it's one thing to be interested in getting your revenue per truck to go up. It's another thing to be committed to getting your revenue per truck to go up. And Jonathan decided to be committed. And so what he did, and by the way, the reason he wanted his revenue per truck to go up is because he wanted to make more profit for his company. But more importantly than that, for him, is it allowed him to hire a better quality technician, pay that technician a higher rate, and ultimately keep those technicians over a long period of time. Because if he can get his revenue per truck up, think about it, your profit per truck goes up. If your profit per truck goes up, then you can afford to pay higher labor rates than your competition. So that will pretty much guarantee you're going to get a good crop of employees compared to your competition. And so he got focused on revenue per truck. And he grew it by 60% over the course of about 5 or 6 years. And at the same time, he reduced his cancel rate from 19% to 15%. So, obviously, if we have a high cancel rate, that's going to be one of the biggest negatives to growing our business is a high cancel rate. We can add lots of customers, but if we can't keep them, we got to sell twice as hard just to kind of stay in the same place. But driving cancel rates is really important, driving them down. So here, Jonathan increased his revenue per truck while driving his cancel rate down. How did he do it? Well, cliff note, and again, we have the webinar if you want to learn more, but a very quick cliff note is um, he invested in equipment. So he made the most efficient trucks that he could make. The trucks are set up to do multiple applications. So they have or he's mostly liquid. So he has multiple tanks with multiple hose reels on each truck. So he can go out and do a fertilizer weed control application. He can do a perimeter pest control application. He can do a tree and shrub application. So he can do multiple services every time that truck stops. So if you think about it, there's a lot of windshield time involved in just getting your truck to the customer's house. But once you get that truck to the customer's house, you might as well do as many services as you possibly can while you're there. This way, we don't have to repeat that windshield time to go do the other services. But to do that, he had to invest in his truck. So there was an investment up front to make that happen. Once he was able to get the trucks to be more efficient, then he was able to get the profit back by driving efficiency and to get more revenue per truck, more profit per truck. He then took a piece of those profits and invested into paying his people higher rates. He kept his technicians a lot longer. I think in his webinar, he tells us that his average technician stays with him something like 7 or 8 years, which is, a lot longer than I think a lot of us see with a lot of our lawn care companies. And he also, because he has the same technician, he keeps the same technician on the same routes year over year. So they really get to know their routes. They get to know their customers. They get to know their concerns with those specific lawns. And that also drives efficiency. The technicians also become a local representative of the company in that neighborhood because they're there every single month. They get to know the neighbors. They get to upsell and get neighbors of existing customers, which drives density. And what do you think happens when you drive customer density? Our revenue goes up. Our revenue per truck goes up. So first he invested in the equipment, then he invested in the people, and then he was able to drive density of customer base. All of those things led to much more revenue per truck and a reduced cancel rate, which was a holy grail for him. So it's one thing to empower our employees. It's one thing to get them excited. It's one thing to give them all the equipment so they can do a great job. But it's not enough. You have to measure what they do every day. I think most of our employees have good intentions, but if we don't measure their results, we can't really manage them and we can't direct them to do better. So every single employee should have a KPI. A KPI is a key performance indicator. So if it's a production-oriented employee that's going out and doing lawns every day, their KPI should be how much revenue can they do per day. What's their cancel rate in their route? How much revenue can they do per hour? You can look at their material usage per square foot. So these are all KPIs you can look at for a production-oriented person. If it's a sales-oriented person, obviously we want to focus on how many sales they can make per day, but also how well priced and how profitable are those sales. What's the cancel rate for the salespeople as well? Because if they don't sell it right, it's going to cancel. So looking at long-term retention rates for your salespeople is another KPI. And so all of these things kind of tie back to managing our people and understanding how to keep them accountable and how to know who was accountable for what functions in the company. And that takes us to our FACE exercise. So this FACE exercise comes right out of the Verne Harnish book. And you guys can see this tool that we have here, which talks about how to measure and how to get KPIs for each one of our people. And so FACE stands for Function Accountability Chart. And you can see the kind of acronym in that orange headline at the top. So that's where that FACE comes from. So on each one of these positions in the company, and by the way, this is kind of generic, so you can edit for the positions that are in your company. You don't have to have every one of these positions in your company. But if you look at head of company, marketing, sales, operations, what have you, customer advocacy, that would basically be like customer service. Or anybody that's going to be interfacing with the customer on a daily basis. And so, but you can use any terms you want for the functions within your company. And then you want to look at, who's accountable to that role. And it might sound really simple. Oh, who's accountable for head of the company? Well, yeah, that's the owner of the company. But what if you have 2 partners or 3 partners? Who's really head of the company? One person might be an equal partner, but somebody else is, but it might not be. They both run the company equally. So that's not always as simple as you think. And when you look at sales, who's accountable for sales? Well, if our entire organization does sales and production, and nobody's accountable for sales, but we're all accountable for sales. If nobody's accountable, if everybody's accountable, I should say, then nobody's accountable. You need to have a single person that is your chief revenue officer. It doesn't mean that the entire organization doesn't sell, but there's one person that's in charge of driving sales, paying attention to sales, and they're accountable for growing sales. And they then get the organization responsible for helping to drive sales. So there's a difference between accountability and sales. And so if you think about being accountable to a role, then that means the buck stops with you. It doesn't mean you do all the sales. It means you're the one that accounts for the sales, measures the sales, makes sure that sales are happening, and makes sure sales is growing. You then get other people in the company to help you with sales. That means many people can be responsible for making sales. Only one person in the company is accountable for sales. And that's true for each one of these functions. And cancels would be another function. So if you have one person that's in charge of or accountable for sales, you should have another person that's accountable for cancels. And so one person in the company measures cancels every single day. They become obsessed about reducing cancel rates. And that person is the champion of cancels. That does not mean that that person personally saves every single cancel that comes through the door. That doesn't mean they're responsible for all the cancels. It means that person is accountable. That means that person counts whether we're getting a reduction in cancels or whether our cancels are escalating. And so if you get one person focused on each one of these functions, then they can recruit many people in the company to help be responsible for driving cancel rates down. And so if you can think through the business that way, you can really drive accountability through the whole organization. And so from there, we've now got our people empowered, we've got them accountable. Now we need to look at our sales and marketing plan. So what are the tactics that we need to consider in growing our business? So we got to set goals, we got to track success, and ultimately it starts with our list, and we need to be focused with our efforts. So when you build your list, number one place I like to sell is canceled customers. A lot of times we don't want to go talk to canceled customers because they were upset and we don't want to get yelled at again. So we kind of avoid that list. I can tell you that when we called our canceled customer list, we tried to solve the canceled customer problems. And it seems to be people that canceled 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. I don't care. Anybody who ever canceled your services, call them back, and you will close, if you're good at it, and if you listen to the customers and help them solve their problems, you'll close 20% of your canceled customers. That's what we used to do. Obviously, you've got estimates, people who call you in for estimates. You want to go out and run those estimates. But even if you do an estimate and you don't close the sale, maybe they went with another company, you want to always keep those estimates and call them 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later. So you always go back through and call your estimates over and over and over again. And by the way, I keep saying calling, but that could mean send out direct mail. That could mean send out emails. That could mean knock on their door, any form of communication. But we'll want to, anybody who ever asks for an estimate, we never want to lose that contact. We want to constantly be marketing to that estimate. You will close a lot of those people because even if they went for another company, if you stay on top of them and stay in front of them, eventually that other company will mess up and you'll be the people that they go to. And then current customers, the number one place to get revenue is by looking at your existing customers and finding out what other services you can provide for them. So look at your current customers. They already know you, love you, trust you, and look for ways to upsell aeration seed, upsell insect control, upsell tree and shrub. Look for people that maybe skip services and find how you can get them to take those extra services. So look to market to your existing customers. And then partnering with other companies. A lot of times, if we're focused on being a lawn spray company or a fertilizer weed control company, we can go to the landscaping and grass cutting companies, and frequently they'll have a few fertilizing customers that it's really a hassle for them. They don't really want to do it. We used to get a lot of business when we had our lawn care businesses by just meeting landscapers and asking them if they wanted to refer us out their fertilizing business. And often they get busy and they can't handle it, and they're happy to send it to you if you're going to do a good job. And by the way, if we're not cutting, if we're not doing landscaping, we can send business their way. So we can specialize, then we can do a better job, and we can partner with other companies to get referring business. And then anytime we get our customers to refer us to their neighbors, that's the best sale in the world. So let's move on to building a list as we kind of think about that. I want to kind of bring this down to be more targeted now. We think about the lists. All customers are not created equally, and not all customers are created equally to every single company either. And so when we think about how to maximize the efficiency of our marketing, we call it the Golden Street strategy. So the Golden Street strategy is the single best way for you to grow your lawn care business. This is what I would want you to focus on doing first. The Golden Street strategy basically says, what neighborhoods, subdivisions do you have that have a lot of homes in them? We say 100 plus homes. Different geographies might have different numbers to be a big subdivision. Some places 50 might be big. In other places like Colorado, 1,000 might be big. But look for those subdivisions that have lots of homes that are similar homes. They're usually those higher value, kind of homes out in the Philadelphia market. If you want to think about the Mid-Atlantic market, it's like that $500,000 to $700,000 home. It could be $400,000 home. In some other markets, it might be a $300,000 home or $200,000 home. But you know what they look like. It's the neighborhoods where 80% of the people in the neighborhood are getting lawn care from somebody. They're usually newer subdivisions, so they're 10 years young or newer, typically. They're those McMansions, as we like to call them, and they're very likely by lawn care. So find just a couple of neighborhoods. I don't want every neighborhood in your geography that has 100 plus that looks like this. I just want a couple that you want to own. So pick 2 or 3 or 4 of these subdivisions that you decide you're going to own. And our goal is to reach 20% saturation in each one of these subdivisions. Because if we can pick just a couple of subdivisions that we're going to own, and we can get 20% saturation, and we have at least 100 homes in each subdivision, that means that we got tremendous customer density. That means we're going to get tremendous efficiency in our production. It's going to drive our profits, and it's going to drive our revenue per truck and our profit per truck. And again, only pick 2 or 3 or max, if you have a bigger company, 4 of these golden streets, these golden subdivisions. Don't pick every single one in your territory, because if we focus, we can make a big impact. But if we spread our energy out over a bunch of these subdivisions, then we're not going to make as big of an impact, because our efforts are going to be spread out. So focus your time and energy on your golden streets. Now let me show you what happens, from a metric perspective when we get these golden streets, and it's going to feed into our cash. So, and again, guys, when we talk about golden streets, we're building density. When we build density, we reduce windshield time. Windshield time is the greatest, one of the greatest things that consumes cash without driving productivity, is windshield time. So anything we do to reduce windshield time is going to be our friend, and it's going to drive cash. So at the end, everybody wants to grow their lawn care business. Or some people might not. They have enough I have enough business. The phone rings too much. I don't want any more. We got a few guys like that we run into. But most people I talk to, they want to grow their business. They want to increase opportunities for them, their family, and their employees. However, a lot of people say, I'd like to grow my business, but gosh, I got to invest money into marketing, and I got to invest money into sales, and I don't have the money to do that. So how do I fund my growth? Well, one way to fund your growth is to get your customers to prepay. And a lot of people get their customers to prepay, but some people, if you're not getting your customers to prepay at all, I highly recommend you offer a small discount and give people the opportunity to prepay, and you will be amazed. 10 to 40% of your customers will prepay, depending on the opportunity, depending on the promotion you give them, and depending on how focused you get at doing it. If you can get your customers to pay you in advance in November and December and January and February, then you can use those prepaid dollars and deploy them into marketing in January, February, and March, when marketing makes the most sense. And so prepays are a great source of funding growth. The challenge is it's got to be cost efficient growth, because if you get a bunch of prepays, and you don't get cost efficient growth, you can spend a bunch of money in marketing and then not have enough profits to keep your business going. So it's something that really important that we measure the ROI, return on investment, that we get from our marketing dollars. Remember, whatever you measure, you improve. And so it's not enough to just spend dollars on marketing, but you got to spend dollars in marketing that you're going to get a return on investment. So when I say return on investment, how do we figure that out? Well, think about your gross margin divided by your cost per sale. So if you look at your gross margin for your business, that gross margin is not your net profit, but just your gross profit. So gross profit, you think about in a lawn care business, it's the cost it costs you to just do that job, just to fertilize that lawn. So that's the direct labor to fertilize the lawn. It's the truck cost spread out over all the lawns, the fuel cost, the fertilizer chemical cost, and the labor to do that lawn. So it doesn't include your secretary, it doesn't include your salespeople, your marketing, your insurance. None of that is in your gross margin. And so a typical lawn care company, gross margin dollars end up being 40 to 60% gross margin. That's a typical lawn care. They vary wildly across the country, but if you just want to say typical, 40 to 60%, let's just say 50% is our gross margin, just to kind of use it as an example. If we say our 50% is our cost per marketing, is our cost per sale, I'm sorry, if our gross margin is 50% and our average customer gives us $400 on an annual basis, so $400 to take care of their lawn, the gross margin at 50% means we get $200 in gross margin from that customer. So if we get $200 in a year from that customer in gross margin, then we got to look at what's our cost per sale. Cost per sale is all the dollars we spend in marketing and in our salespeople and our salespeople's commission. You take all your marketing costs and all your selling costs, you divide it by the number of sales that you get, and that gives you your cost per sale. So if you spend $100,000 in sales and marketing for the year for, let's say, a sales guy plus all the things you're going to do to get him leads and pay his commission and that type of thing, and he gets 1,000 sales for the year, $100,000 cost. You take 1,000 divided by 100,000, you get $100 cost per sale. If our gross margin per new customer is $200, then we will pay for that customer in half a year because our cost per sale was $100. Our gross profit over the course of an entire year is $200. That means we have $100 that gets paid back to us in 6 months, and then the next $100 is ours. So the marketing dollars come off of your gross margin, if that makes any sense. $200 gross margin on a $400 annual revenue per customer with a 50% gross margin, $100 cost per sale in that example I just gave you, you pay for that customer in less than a year. That's a really good ROI. Anytime you can invest dollars into sales and marketing and get those dollars back in less than a year, typically you're winning. So let's move on to the next slide. And I just kind of covered that with cost per sale. So I covered this thing. Cost. Now you got cost per lead and you got cost per sale, two different things. So cost per sale, we spend all of our dollars in generating leads, in measuring the lawns and selling the lawns. We divide that by the total number of sales we got. That gives us our cost per sale. Cost per lead is different because we don't sell every lead. So anytime the phone rings and somebody asks for an estimate, or anytime if we reach out to somebody, knock on their door, or do a direct mail call to them, or do any kind of a advertising piece, we look at the total leads that we got, total number of people that called us for an estimate, total number of estimates we performed, and we divide that by our total marketing costs. So that's marketing costs is just the things we spent to make the phone ring or make people call us. It's not our salesmen necessarily, unless they're generating leads. So you take your total number of leads, you divide it by your total marketing costs, and that gives us our cost per lead. So it's really important that we know our cost per lead and our cost per sale. Cost per lead will typically be much higher than your cost per sale because we don't sell every lead. Let's assume that our cost per sale is $100, and let's assume our close rate is 20%. And that means our cost per lead was probably around $20 because we sell 1 out of 5. So that means we need 5 $20 leads to get the one, sale that generated $100, that cost us $100. So cost per lead is very important to understand. And if we can understand cost per lead per vehicle, so let's just say we did Angie's List. What was our cost per lead for Angie's List? Let's just say we did direct mail. What was our cost per lead for direct mail? Let's say we did door hanging, and we had our technicians hang pamphlets on people's doors. What was our cost per lead for that? If we can measure cost per lead for each one of our marketing pieces, then we can measure which ones are more efficient. Obviously, if we have a lower cost per lead, then we want to do more of that kind of advertising. But we also want to look at cost per sale per vehicle as well, because we may get a lot of leads on something that have a low conversion rate, which means that we may have a low cost per lead but a high cost per sale. Or we may get just a couple of leads from something, but they all close, or a high percentage of them close. So it could actually have a high cost per lead and a low cost per sale. So you got to look at both cost per lead, cost per sale, and as targeted as we can be with those costs per advertising vehicle, the better we can measure the results. And whatever we measure improves. And if we find something that works, do a lot more of that. And if you find something that is driving your cost up, then stop doing that. You know, but you need to measure it. If you don't measure it, you're never going to know. So with that, I just did a kind of education through fire hose here. I think you know, a lot of information in a short period of time. And so at the end of the day, we're really passionate about, you know, building healthy soil, growing healthy plants, and helping our customers grow their businesses. So, you know, at Holganix, we manufacture and distribute organic, bionutritional, microbial-based fertilizers and soil amendments that help you differentiate your business by advertising that your company has a greener footprint. You get better rooting, better stress recovery. You'll get better lawns, which is one of your best marketing tools that you can have. A better lawn with a greener footprint. And so if there's anything that we can do to help you implement those agronomic tools on your lawns, or implement any marketing strategies, if you're using our products, you know, we offer those things to you at no charge. So please reach out to us if there's anything we can do to be helpful. We're here for you. Thank you so much for the time you guys gave us today. I hope we gave you some insights on getting your business ready for 2019 marketing season.